Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic? Let's do it. What's the scariest experience you've ever had? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe.
When my dad hit my mom, she called me crying at 1 a.m. saying she'd locked herself in the bedroom. I transferred her half of their savings out immediately and went home the next day to move her out. The rage in his eyes terrified me. I kept a gun on me and didn't sleep at my own apartment until the restraining order came in. I still carry the gun. The divorce is still being finalized. I'm terrified he'll hurt her and I won't have done enough to protect her. Some years ago, we thought my father had been kidnapped for ransom. Those 3 to 4 days when we thought he was being held somewhere were absolute and sheer terror. Turns out he was killed on day 1. Took a group of 14 to 16-year-olds on a youth camp. We were swimming across a small section of water 15 meters wide and 4 to 5 meters deep. Turns out a few parents and kids lied about being able to swim. There was 2 of us trying to rescue 4 kids who sank like a rock. I was scratched and bitten in the process of rescuing them. We saved all 4, but it was scary as hell. Apparently, they hadn't ever swum, where they couldn't touch the bottom or sides. Getting lost in a cornfield in Amish country, only to be found by the scariest looking Amish guy ever. Children of the Corn is real to me. I had an accident while cheerleading 4 years ago. Me and my team were performing a cheerleader pyramid stunt, and I was the one at the top. One of my teammates lost balance, and that resulted in me falling down and hitting neck to the ground. My sense started becoming confused, and I could only feel a huge pain on my neck, and still heard how my neck broke. I don't remember anything else from there since I became unconscious. I just remember waking up in the hospital and not being able to move a single muscle of my body. I was just scared there lying on bed. There were my parents praying for me, and later on, after some examination on my body, the doctor told my parents I'd never be able to walk or move most of my body ever again because I had broken spinal cord C3 and C4. I had to use an electric wheelchair ever since. House sitting for my sister, and 2 guys tried to break in at like 3 to 4 a.m. I was alone and had finally moved past my severe nighttime anxiety that caused me to be absolutely petrified of someone breaking into my home and harming me while I slept. Like I slept with a phone in my arms in case I had to call 911. It was bad. Staying alone in a big house was a big accomplishment. When the police caught them, they tried to claim they were called to the house to fix a broken door. One of them was arrested because they had a warrant out. The other was let go with strict warning not to return. Needless to say, that incident sent me back 12 steps in my journey to dealing with my nighttime anxiety. A few years back, I was driving on a major interstate when a semi-truck ahead of me in the leftmost lane jackknifed and caught fire. Everyone in the vicinity immediately tried to get into the rightmost lanes, but because of where I was, in the lane directly to the right of it and close behind, I couldn't get very far away and had to pass almost right next to it. As I passed, I saw the cab on fire and fuel pouring out like a waterfall. And in that instant, I knew that if the fuel caught fire, there'd be an explosion, and I'd be toast. It was a life flashes before your eyes moment. Thankfully, I was able to pass by unscathed, but not 30 seconds after I went by, the truck exploded. It was one of those noises you both hear and feel in your chest. I had to pull off at the next exit and sit at a gas station for 15 minutes just to gather myself before I could get back on the road. Amazingly, I heard later that the truck driver actually made it out okay with only minor injuries. My heart rate dropping to 30 beats per minute for 8 hours during childbirth. Finding papers with elaborate plans of how my ex-husband was going to kill me and our children and dispose of our bodies.
Well, I'm not sure if you remember your heart rate dropping to 30 beats per minute, but a similar situation happened when my son was born. There was a cord wrap and his fetal heart rate dropped below 30. and it ended up becoming an emergency C-section. So that was one of the scariest moments of my life, and it didn't happen to me. Yeah, crazy. Split my head open ice climbing. A chunk of ice fell down and hit my helmet, split the back of my head open pretty good. The gushing warmth of the blood flowing down my back still gives me shivers. Wrapped it up and rappelled back down and hiked back to the closest road. A bunch of staples later, it was put back together, but it was pretty scary for a bit. I've been in a car accident where we flipped over several times and landed upside down. I've been in a house fire. I've gotten alcohol poisoning. I've had a gun pulled on me. And about 10 months ago, I did way too much cocaine one night to the point where I actually thought I was going to die. But nothing compares to when my girlfriend called me early one morning and told me she thought she was pregnant. Was stalked out of my apartment with a guy who told me about how he'd arm me and have a dog do it too. He walked alongside me to a park where I stayed until he got bored and left, but it was extremely unsettling because he watched me exit my apartment and knew exactly where I lived. He had also told me during the walk he couldn't figure out how to get in and had mentioned an identifiable thing in the window that caught his eye. It was just surreal. Camping at Lake Huachalufaquin in Argentina with my family and best friend. We were around 13. We noticed a guy staring most of the day at his kids playing on the lake. That night, my friend and I walked down to the trail to take a shower alone. Why, dear Lord? Shortly after, we noticed the same guy trailing. We ran to the bathroom and hid by standing on toilet seats and arms across the wall to not fall. We hear the guy come in and slowly walk around whistling. Nobody else around. We waited at least 20 minutes of silence and ran back. My brother was already on the way to find us. We were terrified, her and I crying silently, and I still remember the heart pounding fear. Being in a store when I was 12 when a tornado came close to hitting the store. While we were walking around, the sirens started going off and the employees made us all gather in the restrooms away from the windows, and then it sounded like a freight train, and I thought we were done for. Fortunately, the tornado didn't touch down on the store, but the sign for the store by the highway was knocked down, and some of the cars in the parking lot were damaged from flying debris. Seeing how messed up things were in the neighborhood near the store made me realize how lucky we were. I was 23 years old, Wichita, Kansas. Every Wednesday, one of the local bars in Old Town had $3 pitchers of beer. My pals and I regularly went. One night, we went out like normal, met a few dudes while watching some NBA on the TV. At the end of the night, we were all in a parking lot just BSing before we went on our way. I was maybe 3 to 4 feet away from one of our new friends when a gunshot rang out and the guy went down. I know I took off, but don't know what everyone else did. Turned out there was an argument down the street where somebody fired on another guy and the stray bullet hit the guy we met that night. He did get hit in the head, but thankfully survived it. It was totally random, but I still think about it every now and again, thinking if I were a few feet in the other direction, that could have been me. This happened a few months ago, but an ex and I had become friends again and decided to go on a hike at 2 a.m. We didn't go far in from the parking lot and were just figuring out constellations and talking for about an hour when I got sketched out because we were by a big drop and I felt weird all of a sudden. We decided to leave, him in front of me since I have hearing loss in my one ear. Out of nowhere he stops dead in his tracks, is staring into the bush to our left and tells me, "Go ahead of me." Twice, since I didn't hear him, but I have never heard him shout this way before. I only have phone flashlight on and can't see or hear anything in the bush to my left that he was staring at. I walked for only a few seconds before he tells me stop and wait for him to catch up to me. Then he says, "Okay, go, but don't run." We speed walk out of there and back to the vehicle. He eventually tells me once we're discussing that whatever was there was loud AF, and he didn't know how I didn't hear anything at all. When he made me go ahead of him, he said whatever was in the bush beside us made a beeline towards me, hence why he asked me to wait for him. We discussed if it could be an animal,
But after he told me that it was super loud and making deliberate steps, stopping when we stop, going when we go, etc., that it most likely wasn't an animal. As we were leaving, he proceeded to tell me that he had been there a week earlier and had saw random homeless tenting there. Dumbest thing I ever did, and don't want to know what their intentions were if they were actually human, like 98% believe them to be. I was walking home with my iPod blasting from a friend's house who lived just under a mile away at 11:30 at night. As I passed by this tiny Korean church that sat on the corner, I noticed a beautiful red car was outside of it, still running, and with the passenger seat door thrown open. I thought it was a little odd that no one was getting out of the car, but I just continued on my walk past the church. The car was not by the stretch of sidewalk that I was walking on, but as I was going to pass out of eye line of the car, I threw a look over my shoulder to see if it was still there. Well, it was. So were two tall black men with guns in their hands, walking directly behind me. At this point, my mind was roaring with dead noise. I stupidly stepped back in the direction of the church, which would trap me into an enclosed area. I violently pulled the headphones out of my ears and told them to stay away from me in a whiny, frightened voice. I think they were wearing masks, but I can't even be sure of that because all I could focus on were the two silver handguns held loosely in their hands and how much taller they were than me, and how isolated it was by the church surrounded by public parkland. One of them said, "Give me the bag, just give me the bag." I took it off my shoulder and handed it to the one who spoke, ran, sobbing hysterically. I thought they were going to shoot me in the back or grab me back by my hair and arm me and kill me. They got in the car and drove off. For the next half mile to home, I would hide in the bushes or behind parked cars when I heard a car coming down the road. I used to build cell phone towers. I was working on a 500-foot tower one time and was just totally into my work when my foreman radioed from the ground all, how's that storm looking? I look up and I'm like, I think I got a bit. I did not have a bit. This gigantic lightning storm was right on top of me, and I'm the tallest thing in the air by hundreds of feet. I've never moved so fast in my life. I didn't use any of my safety lanyards and basically jumped down the tower from section to section. At one point my foreman is like, "You know what to do if lightning hits the tower, right?" In my head I'm thinking, yeah, I die. Supposedly, if I can tie off and lean as far away from the tower as possible with only my shoes touching the tower, but I don't really want to risk the effectiveness of that. I got down safe, thankfully, but I was seriously thinking that was it. I was going to get blown off a 500-foot tower by some lightning in some swamp in Louisiana, and gators are going to eat my body. Two of my sons almost died when they were toddlers, 2 and 3. I worked thirds and accidentally fell asleep on the couch while they were playing in the living room floor. I woke up and the front door was open. I ran outside freaking out. Found them within 30 seconds because I heard the older one crying. They had climbed into and somehow locked themselves in my car in the driveway. It was August and 90 degrees outside. They were thankfully okay, but I know I had taken 10 minutes longer to wake up. I would have lost at least one if not both of them. I never cried so hard in my life. I installed a deadbolt at the top of the door that they couldn't reach even if they got a chair the very next day to prevent that from ever happening again. When my son was 2, he decided to hide from me and did such a good job that I couldn't find him. I was running around everywhere looking for him, and my nephew came running in and thought it would be funny to say my son was hit by a car and dead in the street. I ran outside, and of course, he wasn't outside. I found him tucked in blankets, finally, in a room he wasn't even supposed to be in. It was so scary, and it's still not funny considering the scare, but I guess it's less traumatic than it was then. He's 21 now, and about to have his own child. New fun coming.